Joining me today is Arnie Arnesen, who's a political commentator, and we're going to talk a lot of things political. So, Arnie,
Hey.
Thanks for being here, first of all.
It's a pleasure. I love doing the college.
We love having you back on campus, and hopefully we can get you back on campus and maybe even invite one of your old debate partners, Neil Kirk, to join you sometime.
We go mano a mano. We love it together.
I want to talk first, there's a lot of things I want to talk about, but let's start local first, if that's okay. I'd like to focus on the Jerry Little and his appointment to the banking commissioner role. The governor, a Democrat, appointed this Republican.
Right. She's running for the United States Senate. She has to burnish her bipartisan credentials.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you wrote an op-ed. Can you summarize sort of the pieces against the appointment? What are the key elements?
So we've just left a presidential campaign where on both sides of the aisle, whether it was a Republican or a Democrat, there was a concern about overreach. There was concern about revolving doors, the fox guarding the hen house, the idea that there was too much money in the system, and that you wanted to trust government. And especially on the revolving door, because of what happened in the 2008 economic meltdown, you heard a lot about the fact that, the banks owned this place, is what you learned. And so when you listen to the presidential campaigns coming out of New Hampshire, you thought, wow, this is exciting. People are finally beginning to recognize there's a problem. Well, on the day of the primary, Governor Maggie Hassan, who is a Democrat, who's thinking of will be running against Kelly Ayotte, who is our current sitting senator, issued an announcement that she was going to make an appointment to a position of banking commissioner, the top banking regulator in the state of New Hampshire. And that's no surprise. The fact that she reached out to a Republican, that's no surprise either. What was interesting is the Republican she chose to pick. His name is Jerry Little. He's a first-term Republican senator. He just recently retired, having been the chief lobbyist and the head of the New Hampshire Bankers Association for over 20 years. Before that, he happened to be the communications guy or the press secretary for Governor John Sununu. So he went from the executive branch to becoming the chief lobbyist and sort of honcho for the Bankers Association, then has just served 1 year so far in the New Hampshire Senate. And she decides that she is going to make him her nominee for banking commissioner. And I looked at this and I went, excuse me? I said, we just came out of an election where there was so much conversation about how we're going to have more of an arm's length relationship with Wall Street and finance and banking, and we want people to trust government, okay? And you've decided to take someone who basically has been the chief honcho for protecting banks and giving him the position of being the top banking regulator in the state of New Hampshire. And I was shocked at that. And then I started doing some homework. I found out that the Nashua Telegraph was equally shocked by that, and they beat me to the punch because they wrote a scathing editorial. Let me just read one line here. And after they're talking about what the governor has just done, he writes, "This is why people are disgusted with politics." All right, this is the editorial, not that I wrote, but the Nashua Telegraph wrote, and saying he might be a nice guy, he might be a decent guy, but let's look at where he's coming from and let's look at the position he's going to. And so I thought, okay, what's happening here? And then I started doing some more homework. And I'll give you just one example of why there may be a little bit of egg on Governor Hassan's face. Remember I said he's only served in the Senate 1 year. So I wanted to see how has he served. So I started to Google his name, and I found a press release from the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party had issued a press release last spring. And basically what it said was that he kept referring to the banks and himself as we on the floor of the New Hampshire Senate, and that he was acting in a fashion that seemed to serve the purposes of the banks and not his constituents. And they referred to the fact that he was a crony and that he had a conflict of interest. What's more interesting about that press release from last spring was that it disappeared from the Democratic Party website. But where did I find it? On a Republican Party website, because they couldn't take it down there. Well, that means, which at least within the last year, that my concern about him apparently was the concern of the party, but now that concern has evaporated because she's in both campaign mode and he obviously can bring lots of interesting people to the table because he's been the former banking lobbyist.
And so it raises more issues than just this appointment.
Oh my God,
but it
yes.
raises issues about the entire political system.
Exactly. Exactly.
And, we're out of time. This 5 minutes went really quickly here.
I'm sorry.
We're out of time in this segment, but you know what? We're going to continue our conversation, so please stay with us.